Okay, hello and welcome back. I'm aware that the last episode was a little bit distorted and peaky, so I have changed up a couple of things, and that has meant that it's a little bit harder for me to hear what the game is doing, but I've already, played through it, so it's fine. And it's only for this episode anyway, so I'm just doing some more post-commentary. I did have... So, when I first attempted the post-commentary for this section, I talked about Doom a lot. And I don't think I quite had as much to say as I do about... or as I did, rather, about Pokemon. So, excuse me, instead of talking about Doom, I wanted to talk about my D&D game. So, I am going to do that. So, for those of you who don't know, I DM a 5th edition D&D campaign. It's a homebrew thing. It's not really based on any campaign at all. I do take some monsters like out of the monster guide or something like that. But a lot of it is homebrew. But I do my best to make sure that nothing is excuse me, I'm sorry, it's a little bit late one. But I do my best to make sure that nothing really seems overbalanced. Or, you know what I mean, unbalanced, not overbalanced. If it was overbalanced, that'd be nice. But it's difficult to do that without, having the characters and playtesting the characters and all this kind of stuff. So, it's really been a good exercise for me because it allows me to kind of develop this world that I've had the idea of for a while. Which is, I don't know if you guys saw the Netflix original Bright. It's not, and I know it's kind of off to a bad start, but it's essentially bringing the D&D races into Blade Runner instead of just like LA today. You know what I mean? So like, there are lots of like unique races and like districts that kind of encapsulate a lot of the kind of archetypes of those different races and stuff like that. I probably world built for this, not really this specific campaign. So the campaign itself is, it's been going for about almost a year now, but it's been quite on and off. I think we've had about 25, 26 sessions with the main kind of team, and Zara had to stop playing for a little while, so we started a B team, and there have been about 4 or 5 episodes of the B team, or 4 or 5 sessions rather. So the A team is a Loxodon Warforged fighter. So if you know Magic the Gathering, you know what a Loxodon is. They're essentially giant elephant people, and a Warforged is a robot. So he's a big elephant robot. really cool concept. Bloody annoying player sometimes. Excuse me. Bloody annoying player sometimes. But a lot of fun. A lot of fun, especially trying to deal with his antics. Especially because his backstory was that he's a policeman. So having him be a troublemaker and, you know, just kind of... He's supposed to be lawful good, but he's definitely not. Yeah, so there's a Loxodon Warforged fighter. There's also a human fighter, who I worked on, with the player. I worked on her backstory for a little while, that she is essentially a clone, and she's like a clone soldier, and she was part of like a secret army that was like a kind of paramilitary force for one of the leaders of the city. There's also a lizard folk druid. The druid is a circle of the mountain druid. So he's all about like earth-based stuff. And he has a bit of homebrew abilities called Ferromancy. I imagine because we built his character a bit before Artificer came into 5e, I imagine if we rebuilt him, I imagine he'd be an Artificer. But he works quite well as a druid, so maybe not. There is a Kalashtar Ranger. I put a lot of work in because Zara, that's Zara's character, and I put a lot of work in because Zara didn't really know what she wanted for a backstory. And so I made sure that she had a compelling backstory, because she was an archaeology student, who essentially, her quarry isn't, her quarry is her, like, because a Kalashtar is like a human, right? But they have like a spirit guide called a quarry, and her and quarries are usually like human spirits or maybe celestials. But hers is an ancient blue dragon that died, because she was doing archaeology at uni and came across a ancient dragonborn tomb, where she got possessed by the spirit of an ancient blue dragon. I just thought it'd be fun. And then who else have we got? Lizard folk. I think that's it. And a merfolk cleric. So merfolk from the Ixalan expansion of D&D 5e. Which is really funny because he's quite an avid worshipper of one of the machine gods that I made for this kind of pantheon of machine gods for this city. Okay, so now that we've got the introduction for the party out of the way, the world is essentially self-contained in one city. It's a massive city. It stretches hundreds of thousands or hundreds of kilometers. And there's probably about 100 million people that live in the city. And as such, it is, even though it's quite widespread, it's also very built up. In fact, it's so built up that a lot of the buildings, if you're on street level, you can't see the sun, and there's almost no sunlight that filters down at all. There's a lot, so most of the light in the city comes from, you know, like the typical kind of Blade Runner or maybe Tron, like neon, like blue, green, and yellow neon that you see like everywhere in it. It really brings like this cool kind of aesthetic, especially because a lot of different districts, so the districts are like semi-segregated by race, not really. It's not like an aggressive thing, like the races don't really interact with each other at all. It's more just like, you know, you go home or like you go back to your home country or something like that, and it's all, you know, like there's less kind of foreign people, I guess. That makes it sound more racist than it actually is. This is just me. This bit in the video is just me dying over and over again because I fucking hate this bit. So we have this world. Each district is correspondent to a different race of the D&D kind of races. So the main, like, predominant races are Aarakocra, Merfolk, Dragonborn, Human, Dwarf, and Drow. So the Drow obviously live in the Undercity, and the Merfolk live in a large, predominantly in the river. So the river has, well, there's this large river, kind of analogous to the Amazon, in kind of size, but possibly even bigger. So the Merfolk live in the rivers and the islands in the delta. The dwarves live in the kind of mountainous region to the south. The Aarakocra live in the mountainous region to the north. Oh, plot. I'll come back to that.
It can be broken, and I will be the one to do it. Hala will return to cleanse the world of its impurities. She will create a new world, and this one will fall to ash.
So this is the perfect world you spoke of. I was a fool. You were no father to me. I was merely your plaything.
Well observed, child. But your angst will not help you. This world will be destroyed.
Won't you die along with it? Why would you do that?
But I long to see the end of this world. This has been my life's goal. To begin the world anew and create a paradise. And I shall be gloriously reborn.
I don't know who this Kala is or why you think I'm gonna help you, but I'm not letting you break that seal. Grow all the heads you want.
Okay, so each district of the city called Arathis, sorry, the city is called Arathis. Each district is architecturally, you know, and just kind of generally aesthetically distinct from each other. I think it just makes things pop a little bit more and gives you a more of a sense of geography when you do it that way. And it keeps things fresh as well. It's more interesting to have this really kind of like diverse and livable world, even though it's one city essentially. So the general kind of plot is that Orethus is kind of built over these large kind of roots, like plant roots, which is distinct from Orethus because there is no vegetation that grows in Orethus. A lot of, like in the Lizard Folk district, for example, is a swamp, but there's no vegetation. A lot of the kind of false reeds or whatever are essentially metal rods that stick out of the ground, and it adds this kind of cool swampy texture without it actually being like plant material and stuff like that. I think it's really neat. We can talk about that kind of stuff all day, but essentially Orethus is built on these things called the roots of the arch tree. And so essentially what they are is, well, it is what it sounds like. They're essentially big root pillars that are underground in special kind of magical chambers that house them. And through the various kind of exploits of villains and not protagonists, but villains and heroes, I guess you'd say. I think it's a bit more grey than that. But through various influences, arch trees have sentience, and they don't. So a lot of people have been kind of exploiting the arch trees because they have specific powers to like give life or something like that. They have all of these specific powers that can help people, but in doing so they don't like being exploited, and so it's like they don't react kindly to such aggressiveness, I guess you'd say. So it's an interesting thing. And so essentially the A-Team's plot is investigating why the arch trees are destroying the city, because in the first or the second session, essentially what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that they knew that the threat was real. So what I did was I took the biggest and largest building where they spent the entire session and I destroyed it. Huge vines, and that's quite a common theme, is the theme of kind of natural growth. Huge vines kind of twisted around this thing and then expanded to the point where the entire building collapsed, and there was rubble everywhere and dust, and there was a whole session where they were trying to like navigate through the dust cloud that had been left from all the wreckage, and that was quite an interesting puzzle for them to get out of. And here's some plots. I'm just going to let this happen for a sec.
Yes, this is it. Break free.
Whoa. I mean, this is my third time seeing this now, but it's still cool. And then we get to see her. She looks cool. Boom, and now we get to see all the character work. See, she's cute as fuck. I really like her. And then we get to see him. He's dope. Look at that armor. Sick. She's cute as fuck. And now we land in the desert. So A-Team's kind of plot line essentially is trying to figure out why the arch trees are lashing out at the city, and trying to figure out how to stop them. In doing so, they've kind of found this crime boss that seems to have a quite strong influence over the city and stuff like that.
Why am I all
So,
My name is Thorani. I revived you with the water of life.
God, I love Thorani.
or
Look at her design. Look at how her boobs jiggle in the fucking animation that she has. God, she's just so good. She's my favorite character.
where am I? How
So-
did I get here?
Don't you remember?
Uh,
Bird.
I guess I don't.
Then I will tell you what I saw.
I'm gonna let her talk because I love her.
From the direction of Mount Sumeru and landed practically at my feet. I brought you back to my cave, and I've been looking after you ever since.
She's so fucking hot. Anyway,
Nothing of it, Luke Sal. I could feel your pain.
yeah. So that's the A-Team's plot. Right now they're in the ancient
It's my power.
Dragonborn dungeon where the human ranger got her quarry from because she kind of had a dream
One of my greatest joys.
and saw a vision.
If you're feeling everyone's
So now she's actually in touch with her quarry, which is cool.
I might be.
And now
You can get used to anything.
I want to talk about the B team for a little bit. So the B team was investigating how to get rid of vines in the Delta, which is the Merfolk district. And they fell in and ran into a machine god. So the machine gods are basically
I'm not that cute.
either deified or personified functions
What happened?
of the city, but some of them do actually exist
I think something happened there,
as
but my brain is
as
so
what
foggy,
I
I just
refer
don't
to
remember.
as minds.
Your memory will return. I assure it. You have been sleeping for 3 days.
So
Just need more
they
time to recover.
Days?
run into a machine god by the name of Grotesh, who is
No, my cloud
a
Do we lose our own minds?
Oh my.
like an angel. She's like an artificial angel, essentially.
Don't remember? Fought Ravanavar. You chopped his head off. He
And she was using the power of
got all
an
all these eyes.
one of the roots of the arch tree
Thing I ever
to
Oh,
build herself an organic body.
it's like you became a different person. I've never seen anything like it.
So
Ravanavar?
they had a big fight
No one could have
over it,
survived that blast at such close
and
You know,
eventually they decided to let Grotesh live because she is really overpowered because she's a god. And so they decided not to attack her anymore and let her continue her body growing stuff.
if she has broken free, that
And
means
then
our shoulders.
they ran into a concept that I had been tinkering with for a little while. I thought I was going to do it for the A-Team plot, but it made more sense to go with the B team because I think they're kind of a little bit smaller scale.
This is Thorani. She took care
So they ran into
Thank you.
and they're also
I'm Achna.
much more single-minded than the A-Team. A lot of them are either chaotic neutral, chaotic good, or one,
I need to try to piece this all together.
a tiefling, I think a tiefling warlock, was a,
You seem like you have something to say?
I'm not sure how to talk to you.
was chaotic evil, and I believe now he may be good.
I am.
Through the kind of role play that he had with Grotesh, I think his player kind of really decided, okay, maybe I don't want to be chaotic evil anymore, which I thought was a really good bit of role playing.
I don't have anything to do with Kala.
Sorry, I'm just talking over this, by the way. It is important plot, but you also have the subtitles. So
I never
it's interesting.
human. It's a good thing we don't have to eat while we're there.
Or poop.
So now they're
Vajna.
kind of dealing with a cult that has now risen and worships, kind of out of fear and kind of out of respect for the vines that are popping up everywhere and kind of destroying the city and taking
I don't
over.
think you're a monster. You wouldn't have survived that blast alone. You probably saved their lives.
So,
But isn't it weird that I've been
God, I love you, Thorani. I love you so much. Anyway, it's just every time I see her, ugh.
But I don't want to be a creature.
You are too
So,
yourself.
for the last 2 sessions of the B team, they dealt with a cult and the kind of like sect leader,
And terrifying.
um,
I'm sorry.
and kind of figured out a bit more about the cult and the kind of influence that it had and stuff like that. And it was really cool. Lots of really good roleplay. That's the thing that I really like about my D&D group, is that the roleplay is really, really strong. I try to make combat engaging. I try to have like very descriptive fights so that the players feel like they're in it. But a lot of the powerful kind of stuff that is happening in this campaign and in the other campaign too is coming from the roleplay, and I love that.
Honestly, kind of disappointing.
I'm sorry?
There's just something about really good roleplay that just gets to me. So with the last kind of couple of minutes, I wanted to describe probably my favorite bit. I posted this on Reddit a little while ago, but I wanted to talk about it here. So, what I wanted to do
I don't really understand what's
was establish
strong.
the
So angry.
big bad.
Did I release Kala?
And so what I did was
What does that even mean?
It means we're gonna die.
I built up an NPC that the players had already met, and she was quite useful. She was an old kind of Arakocra, and she had this funny little affectation that I gave her where she would, kind of talk like a grandmother, and like kind of like that. But after every sentence, she would cluck. So she would go like, "Oh yes, my name is fucking, I can't remember. Kawaka. Kawaka was her name. Yes, my name is Kawaka. I am the counselor for the Arakocra." And it was just like, I can't deliver it as good as I did, but it was just really good, and it really endeared them to the NPC, which fucked them when I killed her. And I killed her in that session. There was a kerfuffle going on down in the kind of square below them, because it's quite a tall building on the top of a mountain. So,
Wait, everyone. Listen to the
so most of the team went downstairs to deal with the bugbears and goblins, and the ranger stayed upstairs. The ranger gets knocked unconscious and then wakes up into to a very dark room.
Sorry.
And she looks around and she sees the big bad, who they had essentially ignored, and they. So while the people are downstairs fighting the goblins, and then they realize that they're headed to a hospital where an NPC had been, an NPC that had been traveling with them for a little while, and they had left there. The big bad was in the dark room and had killed Kawaka. And that's all I have time for, so thank you for watching, and if you like this, then tell me.